In this video, we speak about the world of mediums. This is an area where there's a lot of speculation as to kind of what a medium does. But we kind of cover a few subjects which speak about spirit manifestations, about visions, about theories around mediumship and spirit guides and alternate realities, all sorts of interesting things. So hope you guys find this quite an interesting conversation, and be good to know your thoughts. Hello and welcome to Paranormal Perspectives, episode 3 already. I can't believe 3 already so far. And my name's Kieran Mace, and I have the lovely Penny with us, and Christine. Hello, and thanks for being here.
Good evening.
So just as a reminder, the idea of Paranormal Perspectives is to ultimately normalise the paranormal. So rather than it being a bit of a wishy-washy conversation, or it's scary, it's a bit this, a bit that, it's just about showing that normal people experience quite amazing things, really, and it's all about us sharing those experiences and learning from each other. At least that's the idea. So just to kind of start the conversation, I know Christine's kind of defined kind of what a medium is. I'm kind of curious, Penny, how would you define a medium? What does a medium do to anybody that would have not experienced a medium before?
Okay, so for me, being a medium, I believe that we are the natural channels and the voice for those that can't speak to their loved ones anymore. Really, we are the ones that can see, hear, feel, and almost become that loved one to bring that total connection and belief system and understanding that life does continue and that they walk beside us every day.
Yeah.
Although we can't see them. That's my definition.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, because it's like, I suppose so much pain in life kind of does come from the fact that we're kind of taught that life just ends and that's it. It's almost like, we're given just one life. When you die, that's it. And when your friends or family kind of, part ways, you're told that essentially you never see them again, and that's that. And so much pain kind of comes from that. So, I love the fact that kind of like mediums' missions, I suppose, is to kind of, for one, help people through life and by simply educating them, and also bring them closer to the reality of the world we actually live in, that, the fact that people do kind of pass on ultimately and go into kind of bigger and better ventures in time. And it's quite a privilege to be, one of those many people that allow people to connect and just feel a bit better about life, really, because life is beautiful, and it kind of seems less beautiful when we're just here for a moment and then just disappear. When you realise that you're part of a greater thing, it just makes life so much more beautiful.
I would just like to say, this isn't something that I ever thought I would end up doing at all in my life, ever. And I think that most natural mediums also feel the same way. It's not a career choice, really. It's not something that you decide you've got a passion for from a young age, or you've got an interest in, because 9 times out of 10, we don't learn about this until much later on in our lives. And then things that we've been doing normally and naturally, we then have an understanding and a word and a name for it. And then you stand back and think, well, that's not me. I can't do that. When, in fact, if you do a life review, we're probably all doing it every day, but we just don't realise.
Absolutely. It's not the kind of thing you'd really kind of find at your local job centre, something you'd apply for. And but as well as so some people, you kind of just almost chosen for it. That I do believe like everybody has the ability to be a medium, because ultimately it's just accessing what equipment is already there. And some people are kind of born with that access already open. Some people that experience, it could be a traumatic event or something that happens that kind of reactivates that. Some people go through their lives without activating that, and that's okay as well. There's nothing wrong with that. But some people are kind of in conflict. Like for myself, I've been quite a reluctant medium. I don't know why. Maybe it's social stigma and all that. And it is a shame, really, because as I previously mentioned in the last episode, I was brought up in quite a religious upbringing where they saw kind of anything that was outside of the norm of the norm being what was dictated within a particular scripture. If it's outside of the norm, it was seen as bad, or you're seen as bad and incomplete or evil and imperfect, all the negative stuff. And naturally, it kind of makes you want to close up. And so many people out there today are kind of very much kind of in that kind of mindset where if you dare mention it, you must immediately see them as a horrible person or a charlatan, all this kind of stuff. And it seems like now the world seems to be gradually moving out of the old days, really, and actually going, I'm experiencing some more things myself, or at least I haven't experienced something though, but I'm beginning to get interested in these kind of new things, because science itself is evolving, all these things are happening. And yeah, hence
Absolutely.
why we're having this conversation. Really, it's just saying like we're normal guys. You know, we're not superheroes. You know, we're just here, just trying to do a good thing. And some of us just have it cast upon us. Like you say, some things you don't really expect to be doing. Some people choose to develop and become them, and it's all good.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely.
So how do you feel about that, Christine? Anyway, so like, what was it like being a medium? I suppose.
Well, I go to Sainsbury's and I clean up cat litter and I do all the normal things. We're just normal people. And, um, I do all the normal things. Um, we're just people. And I think um, that's the wonderful thing about having the internet because we can hook up with people and we can talk to people and people can go, you're saying some really nutty things, but you are normal. And whatever normal happens to be, as I've said this before, I think everybody has an ability to be a medium. Because if you think about it, we're spirit. We've come here for a very, very short period of our total existence, which could be millennia. Yeah. We come here for 70, 80 years. And, you know, we we just aren't, we have to learn that the spirit world and us are interconnected. It's not something that's out there and it's only accessible to weirdos or priests or, you know, special people, but not everybody should. So it's like,
Yeah,
what I mean by that is we can all drive, most of us can drive, but we could, not all of us are going to be Lewis Hamilton.
yeah. I
Yeah.
drive
And
terribly,
I
to be
don't
fair.
believe mediumship. I don't know if you agree with me, Penny. Mediumship is not the only way of working with spirit, for instance.
Absolutely.
You can save animals, you know, volunteer at your local whatever. That's a, that's working for spirit too. Anything about love and caring for other people, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but there are a few people that can, like I say, you know, dip in or out that greater consciousness and go, I've got a bit of information for you. And it's mind blowing when it happens. It's absolutely mind blowing. Yeah. But it's accessible to everybody.
oh, absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't you help someone that you felt, you know, if you felt like you'd do something to help somebody, why wouldn't you? That's the thing. So I do eventually see, you know, humans ultimately just becoming, you know, humans again, essentially. Like, you know, mediums are considered to be almost like an isolated subgenre of sorts, essentially accessing what we all already can access anyway. So the more people that eventually just begin to subscribe to these, you know, this technology we already have with us, you know, built within us, eventually it will just become a normal part of humanity. You know, we have the defined sixth sense. So I can never say that, sixth senses. That's a tongue twister. Um, and then from that, basically, yeah, we had that kind of concept years ago. You know, like in the film with was it Bruce Willis, The Sixth Sense? You know, about this kid having the ability to see kind of people that other people can't kind of see. And I know that's another thing I wanted to ask you, Penny, as well in a moment. But yeah, ultimately, I just see it just becoming a normal thing. It's just like part of our kind of known senses. We can pick up things. You know, we essentially had the internet before we had the internet. Ultimately, like, you know, the concept of the internet today, like we connect through our Wi-Fi routers to communicate with people. Like, but people have actually been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, and that's what's so beautiful about it. You know, back then they didn't need electricity.
I think there was a time when it was absolutely normal, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
It's us that's lost it. Yeah. So at one time, I think there was a real connection that was recognized by the ancient peoples, and they had this connection with the spirit world. But we lost it. We got lost. But we can get
yeah,
we're starting to claim it back now, I think. And it was normal to them to go up in the hills and talk to the spirits because they
yeah.
had that connection. They had no distractions. We have iPhones and all the other lovely.
Long time ago, you know, you say you believe that we had this, and I honestly believe too that we could connect to something greater. I suppose I pose the question, like, why do you both think we lost that connection? Like, was there an event that happened where we began to kind of step away, or was it almost a deliberate thing as well? Was it a choice, as in, okay, being taken away?
Religion killed spirituality. I don't know if you think that, Penny, but it took spirituality, beliefs of people, and it it became a system for power. We had the rise of the churches. There was so much going on before the churches, and universally, I think they're all equally apart. Just a
Yeah,
system of suppression. And
yeah,
if you thought outside of that, if you were in some way, I don't know, a deviant, you know, and can you see where I'm going with this? If you don't conform to our belief, then so people were stunted. They were stopped from being able to explore like we can explore now. They weren't able to do that because the church said no. And that's my. Do you feel like that, Penny? That it was religion?
For me, then, I agree with that totally because we're all indoctrinated, but I also think it was society as well. Because if you were deemed to be doing anything outside of what they considered the norm, then we were just weirdos and they probably locked us away or stoned us or burnt us or did any of those things. And I think we've learned that because it's obviously in our like DNA, etc. It's all within us, within our soul growth, because we've had many lifetimes, doing all of this, and we've now arrived now in the 21st century. So I think that for me, I think a lot of people have to sit and have all these experiences, but not find an outlet. I think nowadays the outlet is now back, thank goodness. And I think, the freedom to be authentically who we are, regardless of any religion, because most people, sorry, I have to say this, most people I know don't go to church because for us, outside, nature, breathing, family, love, care, all of those things, that's our church, that's our religion.
Absolutely.
That's my belief, and I'm sorry if I've offended anybody, but that's what my belief is.
I had quite a bad experience kind of with the religion I was part of when I was younger, mainly because I didn't have a choice and they didn't accept who I was. And
Exactly.
I like to think I'm a good person. I'm not perfect. I'm a bit of an idiot at times, but I do have good intentions and I want to kind of share that. But I suppose like as I've been educating myself since I left that religious organisation, but I feel like I don't want to say who because I don't want to give a bad impression because I do believe there are good parts of it too. But basically, since I left that, I kind of re-educated myself, and when my religious education
Found yourself,
lessons,
Kieran.
I found. Well, that's the thing. Have you ever heard the quote by Socrates? All learning is a form of rediscovery.
Definitely.
So it's basically like we often rediscover things we had previously learnt, and that's kind of what we're kind of doing through this process, really. But yeah, when I left the church years ago, I started to just expand my mind because I thought, well, the religious education lessons I had at school only taught me about one particular religion and like a tiny little bit of another religion, and that was it. But I don't understand how that's religious education because why wasn't I given all the comparables where I looked at other different beliefs from different cultures? What about non-belief? What about just being spiritual? All these different things I felt kind of denied really. So when I kind of expanded beyond that, I researched atheism because that's one thing that was the no-no thing when I was growing up. You don't talk about them. And there are some people out there who simply go, okay, I haven't seen any proof of your claim, so I don't believe that. And until I see that proof, then I'll consider it. And that's quite a reasonable statement to make, really. And there are other religions as well. I looked at kind of Buddhism for a little while as well. I find that fascinating. I think that religion is one of the many still active today that connects to like the ancient knowledge. It's still judgmental in some other ways, admittedly though, but it still has, an element of what we had a long time ago. Yeah, I looked at Hinduism for a bit as well. I looked at Judaism. I mean, Christ, I even looked at Satanism for a bit. Anyway, just out of curiosity, actually. And I think there is some logic there. I hate to say, but then again, like a belief built upon anti-belief of a belief, if that makes sense. Just focusing on a particular one, I kind of question like what's the meaning behind that. But ultimately, I expanded my mind and just learnt more, whether I agreed or didn't agree with it. The fact is that I bothered to look them up. I'm not an expert in all of them, but I read quite a good few books. I read, watched so many different kind of videos, just anything that I could get my hands on, basically. And since then, I felt so more respect for the human condition, I suppose, that we all are trying to seek something more, but some of us aren't fully aware that we have everything within us. And that's the thing about this whole deity thing. We're often told that we need to focus and pray to a singular something outside of ourselves. Over time, we begin to realize actually we hold all the power. So I'm beginning to open up to the concept now that we're part of something greater. So ultimately, we are gods of our own making. And that's the thing, and then you realize you have the power to make your own life, really, and do positive things with it. So, and again, that's another part of the way that I define mediumship, really. It's like realizing you have the power within yourself to, change the world, really, and change people's lives, ultimately, moving us towards a more peaceful world where, you realize there are no barriers but the ones that we make for each other. So, one question for Penny, if that's okay. At what point did you realise you're a medium? What happened to you? Do you have an interesting story around that moment?
So I gave that some thought today, and honestly, Kieran, I cannot remember when I realised what I was. So if I can just share something that I kind of relate back to as my own becoming aware, if that's okay. I'll make it short because I do yana quite a lot, but anyway, so I need to take you to my life. I was a foster child in an older family that again were quite religious people, and at the age of 5 I would go into the living room. I get my mum's, when I say mum, it's my foster mum's Bible, and all these people would come and sit on all the furniture and stand in the room. And I would stand in front of the fire at 5 and I would recite the Bible. And I did this every single day for as long as I could remember. But one thing that always sticks in my mind was my foster father came in and sat in the chair, and I was very upset because he was sitting on the man and he couldn't see the man. I could see the man, and I was apologising to the man, and I got quite upset, and obviously I got sent to my room. But I think if that's the question, when did I first realise? Not knowing, because I was only 5, I guess that would have been my first starting place.
Yeah.
Really, that's kind of my start of it, I guess.
That must be quite a shock. So do you mean you see manifestations of people when you say he sat on somebody that was in the chair? Yeah.
All the time. My biggest crashing down of my experience of my life as I was at school in where I grew up, Oxford, and seeing the people that were around and about that place in all different dress, looked different. Some of them spoke differently, and I asked a friend of mine, "Oh, look at that guy." And she goes, "What guy?" And I'm like, "But that guy." And I had this massive, and it made me, I always remember it because it made me feel really fearful. I was crying because I then couldn't understand what was wrong with me, because up until that time, I believed that everybody saw these other people.
How old were you, Penny?
At that point, I was about 15.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I would go off. I'd have people in my bedroom. We'd go out to places. I would see people that weren't there, relatives that weren't there. And I just didn't say anything because I just thought everybody saw the same thing. And I know that sounds absolutely mad, but that's my truth.
It's clearly not mad. I mean, 100% believe you, because I remember the first time I met you, actually, because I know you're a friend of my mum for some years, and you helped me. And I always remember that you helped me because you kind of came into my life at that transitioning point where I was beginning to split away from my old life, really, and understand what I was. Because, do you mind me sharing this story, if that's okay?
No, that's okay.
Yeah, because basically I was kind of grumpy teenager. Most normal teenagers will go out, get drunk, maybe buy stupid clothes. Was that me, Kieran?
The grumpy teenager?
Yeah. Totally. I would have loved to know you when you were a teenager. That would have been hilarious.
No.
I was the standard grumpy teenager, just frustrated at life, and like I say, like most teenagers will go out and get drunk, just go and do crazy things, just sleep around other people's houses, whatever it might be. Instead, I got so angry I ended up opening up a Vortex in my room, which was completely mad. But basically, like, for quite some time before I met you, there was this thing where again, I thought this was normal at the time anyway. So I was around 16, 17. I think it was around that age. I was quite my early teens, but not so much. It was about then. So basically, I lived in this room. It kind of faced the garden of our property when I lived in Oxford, and usually between the hours of about 1 till 3 o'clock in the morning, like the whole room would just fill with these voices, and it sounded like initially like there was a party going on next door where I could hear laughing, the chinking of glasses, like banging of tables. It's like everybody was having a good time. At first I thought, I want to join this party, this sounds great. And I kind of ignored it, fell asleep, and the next night it got louder and louder, and eventually it settled in my room. And that's when I began to freak out, because I could actually hear all of this kind of conversation happening, and it was loud enough to be audible. It wasn't so loud like it was taking over the whole room and waking up the whole house. But I could hear it like it was loud, but at the same time it wasn't a physical sound, if that makes sense. But yeah, this thing was happening for a while where I just would be woken up night after night, and I was just exhausted at this point. And so yeah, this was at a time of my life when I was just quite angry, quite frustrated, and there's a lot of negative energy going on as I was dealing with lots of bullies at school and college and all sorts of different things, But either way, I was kind of outletting that in not a great way, really. So obviously that seemed to trigger something in the room. So it could have been something that was there before, or I could have created it though. Ultimately, like, we ended up with this vortex in the room, and it kind of grew more and more over time, where I think it kind of hit the peak of this negative pinnacle, really, where I walked to my room and something kind of felt a bit off before I opened the handle to open the door. I kind of felt like the whole energy of the room just dropped, like gravity got a lot heavier, and I felt it in my gut, like something bad was about to happen. And I opened the door to my room, and the whole room just was warped. It's like the colour was sucked from reality, and it was just warped and twisted. And it was all kind of focused on this very particular corner of this cupboard at the back of my room. And I just freaked out at that point, because I thought maybe I was having a panic attack or something wasn't quite right. So I just legged it out the house, never ran so fast, and told my mum about it. My mum was obviously very shocked, but being my mum, obviously always helping her kids, she said, why don't you just sleep in your sister's room for tonight? And yeah, this was all to do at a time when we were dealing with some personal family issues as well. So I thought maybe it was a build-up of stress, basically. It could be all different things. But all these things kept happening after that point, where I'd have certain bowls jump off the table, for example, have doors open. We had like voices in and around the house. It was getting a bit kind of crazy, really. And yeah, it was kind of roughly boiling to the point where I met Penny for the first time, and that's kind of when he spoke to me, and I kind of took you to my room and kind of told you about this, because weirdly enough, despite meeting you properly for the first time, because I heard about you here and there, but I don't think I met you properly at that time. I think there was another time you kind of came back and I kind of explained things to you, and I felt like I could trust you with this, even though I thought, to me, you're a stranger, really, and that's a weird thing to do in itself. I'm quite insular. I don't like to share things. And I explained the whole situation, that everything that had happened, and as I was talking to you, I was almost just shivering, really. Like, I couldn't explain the feeling, like something activated, and I couldn't stop visibly shaking, and it was just the weirdest moment. And you kind of explained, okay, well, what you're experiencing, like, ultimately, you're telling me that you're switching on to this kind of world. You didn't directly say that I was a medium then, because I don't think I was ready to hear that then, but I think you were saying that you're beginning to switch on. Okay, let's handle this situation, really. So long story short, we came up with a solution to rectify this thing that was in the room, because at the time we were due to be leaving the property as well, like a little while after. So we didn't want to leave anything behind in this house for the next people coming in, though. But the technique that you kind of showed me, you kind of gave me some things to hang and put into place and some things to follow. That kind of seemed to counter that, and over about this period of about a week or so, it got less and less. Like the voices eventually stopped, and that weird warping sensation, and yeah, so eventually that solved that issue. But that's kind of one of the first times where I began to realize, actually, this thing is beginning to become real, and and another person's talking to me about this that I'm experiencing. And it's the fact that I won't say what you said now anyway, but there's things that you said to me then, having never met me directly before. You said things about me that even my mum didn't know about then. And that was incredible. That I was like, how do you know that? Why do you know that? Did I say someone? So yeah, there are just some people out there who just have their own internet, and they just seem to be able to access the right things at the right time just to help people out. And yeah, ever since that situation happened, I began to kind of get control of this thing. It's taken many years to get into a good enough place. But the fact that was the first time where I began to feel like I'm actually quite normal. I'm not weird or sort of some sort of weird freak that can only hear these things. I'm actually quite a normal kid. So yeah, that was my little discovery then.
Bless you.
What's one of the most positive experiences you've had? That's something that's kind of made you smile, I suppose, or something that's kind of helped you in life.
Okay, so if it's okay, I'd like to share an experience that happened. And
Yeah, go for it.
obviously, I did most of my training at a church in Oxford. And that's for another day how I ended up getting into that, because that was just bizarre as well. Because everything in our lives, obviously, Chris, you'll understand as well, is quite bizarre. But it becomes the norm after a while, if you know what I mean. It's our norm. And so anyway, I then moved home, and I managed to get a reading job in a crystal shop. And we used to come here on holiday, and it was one of those places that I always used to say to myself, one day you're going to work here. And obviously I did, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. It was wonderful. So if it's okay, I've had to write this down because I do gabble and I lose my track. That's my Asperger's and autism, but we're okay. So this one particular day, I had been there, I don't know, probably a couple of weeks. People didn't really know me, and that's fine. And I was at the shop waiting to see if anybody came in, just like as a walk-in. They were advertising for readings. And this young man came in, but this is his story, basically. So a young man, and he was actually in the armed forces at the time. He was mid-20s. He'd lost his friend, who also was in the armed forces. And he became really good friends with his sister, not as a relationship, just friendship, supporting each other through grief. And basically, they'd been to visit his grave, and they told me that on top of the grave was a penny. So they left it there because, you know, the old tradition, sometimes people put money, don't they, on top of the gravestone, etc., etc. They had to come into town. So as they were then parking up, he opened the door of his car. On both sides, there was a penny. So when they got out of the car, there was a penny on the floor. They walked into town. They saw 3 more pennies. And as they walked past the shop front where I used to work, they saw 3 pennies. They went up to the shop, done a bit of shopping, got some baccy, They came back, was going to walk past the shop, and the 3 pennies were still there. Just at that point, my boss lady was putting a new poster in advertising that I was there to do readings. And of course, my name's Penny. And they both said that they got a little bit freaked at that point. It's not really the sort of shop they would have gone into. They were totally non-believers. They were in grief, bless them. And they'd literally, obviously, just lost someone very, very dear. And they came into the shop and they were sort of mulling around, and I looked over, and I have to be honest, I saw 3 people, not just 2. And my boss came over and she said, have you got, an hour, because these people would like a reading? I was like, right. So she got 2 chairs ready. I said, no, we need 3 chairs and I'll stand, because I always stand to work anyway. And she looked at me like, there's only 2 of them. I'm like, there's 3 of them. And she didn't argue. It was fine. She brought another chair in, and that was fine. I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but it's the truth. And as it turned out, the young man came through with a really strong message, because the young man himself that had actually come in was actually contemplating ending his life. And his sister had stopped eating because of the grief and was basically really, really poorly, and was becoming very anorexic at the time. And there was other things to do with other members of the family. The guy brought through some amazing evidence. And they went away and they hugged me and they said, we can't believe the trail of pennies. And I just looked at them and I said, this is not actually about me. I just happened to be there that day. Spirit and your loved one obviously apported those pennies so that they followed the pennies or noticed the pennies, because I was the one that day that was there that was going to help them to save their lives from their loved one that was no longer here. And that absolutely blew my mind. I had to have 3 fags after that because I was a bit shocked.
That is absolutely incredible. It's kind of left me almost speechless, actually. Crikey. But it's the thing, like, what a great life lived. If you could just help at least one person in the entirety of your existence, then your existence from that point has been more than just justified, because you've helped another person's existence. you'd help someone stay here a bit longer as well, because so many people grapple in those situations where they feel like there's no hope. Basically, they can't kind of break out of this kind of way of seeing things. So sometimes you do need something quite sharp and quite amazing, ready to snap them out of that. To realize actually, like, I'm meant to be here for longer. I have more work here to do, kind of thing, and that's incredible, really. So, it's okay. Yeah, Christine, do you have a similar kind of positive experience? Really, is there anything that's kind of made you go like, "Wow, this is amazing"?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many, Kieran, down the years, and I can't really reach in and go, definitely that one. I think it's when you see a situation like that occur, when everything comes together, then you know that there's an intelligence behind it, and you see the outcome of it. Similarly, like I wrote in the book about a girl who had seen her friend, and she'd passed on the information, and it pulled the bereaved person back from suicide. Spirit will step in. If you imagine well, I imagine that they're a bit like a benevolent grandparent watching us. You know, they can see ahead of time. They can see that this is not forever. And if you're in a horrible place, it's a temporary place. It's a journey. How tragic it would be to stop it, because of how you're feeling and have been feeling. And they want you to be here and to evolve. And I've seen so many things like that. People I've seen come out of readings and they'll go, wow. And it's just a very, very beautiful thing, I mean, we had a young man here last week for a reading. He doesn't believe anything, but he was here, so there was three of us, and he left with a different point of view, and that's nice to see. It's not going to make him, well, yeah, definitely, but it's going to make the seeds, because the girls that were reading, the circle that were reading for him, they brought out some amazing evidence, and he was saying, and I'm saying to him, how do you explain that? Because he's always got a thing, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, could have been the other. But he just went away. And I think that spirit is very patient, and they work in ways that lets the seed grow. Now, those people that had the reading off you, Penny, that's life changing if you want it to be. If you take that and you go, my God, I want to look more into that, or you go on your way. So I'd love to pick one out, but there's just so many. That was a lovely story, Penny.
Thank you. Thank you. So, if it's okay to say, this is not about me, because my guide always tells me that if he was still here, he wouldn't need me at all. And he's absolutely right. And Christine, if it's okay to pick on something that you mentioned earlier, when people ask me, what do I do for a job, or what do I do in my life? I tell them I'm a housewife, because ultimately that is exactly what I am. That is it. Until the time that I am called upon to work.
I agree, Penny. I don't like being called a medium. To me, a medium is somebody like Gordon Smith or, John Edward. I don't put myself there. I'm just a woman that writes some words. I talk to people, and sometimes I get messages. How it happens, I don't know. So I always think it's a bit grand for me to call myself a medium. I'm a bit, I don't know. That's not me, really. Because I always see mediums as doing it full time. For me, it's just part of my life.
I'm quite interested. You were saying that not everybody should be a medium, and I totally agree with you on that one, actually, because obviously we've been around. Don't want to say the circuit, but we've been around people that are spiritual, and we've seen some really great people that have kind of fallen for the ego route. The whole it's me. And I find that really sad.
I call them Benidorm Bob.
Sorry, you call them who now?
Benidorm Bob, turkey teeth, and they're all like, and they're a crock. I'm sorry. They do it a disservice. I mean, to me, they're doing it a disservice. I don't know. It's become, like you're saying, Penn, it's become about them. The true thing about the whole thing about mediumship is being able to look at somebody and say, I've got your dad here. And remember the time you stood on his feet and danced with him, and they go, yeah. And it's like you can see that something beautiful's happening. It's not about all the it's not about me, it's about them just using me.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so you do get, I think you have to have a bit of an ego to get up on a stage and do it. But you can't let the ego get you, because there have been people that have fallen, unfortunately, and that's sad, I think.
Actually, I want to pose like a mystery to you both, really, because I think you know about the story that I mentioned before, but I haven't actually kind of solved what this thing is yet, and I'm kind of curious to see kind of maybe what your guides might be saying, you know, what it might be. So basically, like I told you guys about the story about the carpet. It sounds really boring, really bizarre, but it's something really freaky. So basically, for anyone who's watching who obviously doesn't know the story, so for a good, I'll say 8 or 9 years even, I used to have the same dream about 2 times a week. Sometimes it would be 3 times a week. Sometimes it will be one. But either way, it will be at least once a week. In this dream, I kind of found myself in this infinite void. It was completely pure black. And right at my center focal point was this beam of light and this kind of open kind of light area where I could see this rug. It's quite a normal looking rug. It was like red with black patterns and kind of golden kind of details. And it was quite nice looking. And I kind of walked towards the rug because that was the only thing I could see in this kind of vision. And as I approached it, a voice said to me, and it wasn't spoken, it was almost transmitted to me, and it just said simply, your task is to fold this rug. I thought, okay, that's strange. So I walked to the rug, and it was just bigger than me, so I kind of struggled with it a little bit in this dream. I kind of folded it in half. Then I realised as I folded this rug in half, it didn't half, it was still the rug. I kept folding it and folding it and folding it, and it's almost like it was getting smaller and smaller at a certain point, and then it was immediately bigger again. It was like this rug just kept going on and on and on. It was just like the infinite, really. And in this dream, like it sounds silly saying it now because it does sound kind of amusing saying it, but in the dream itself, it was quite frightening, really. Like it was like I was trying to process or conceptualize what infinity is. And it just didn't end in this dream. I don't usually wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, from this dream and be in a panic with the heart racing and all that. And it just kept going on for years and years and years, but I just didn't tell anyone about it because it seemed so bizarre at the time. And I just thought, okay, well, I'll probably just grow out of it eventually. And it never changed. The dream was precisely the same every time. And eventually, like as an adult, like it happened again. I thought, I can't take this anymore now. I'm a grown up now, and I shouldn't be having these little dreams. So I called my sister. Like I kind of tend to joke with her a lot. We're very immature anyway. We're all business in the day. We work for these different companies though, but we're still never too old to have a bit of a laugh, really. But this time I called her with a serious phone call and said, look, I need to talk to you about something that's been bothering me for years and years, and this dream just keeps happening and happening. And I described to her in absolute detail, like I'm telling you now, as much as I could tell her. And she just went quiet on the phone. I said, is everything all right? So I thought, well, maybe the phone's just cut off, and I could hear her sort of breathing at the end of the phone. And I said, is everything okay? I've had that same dream for years and years and years since I was a kid, and I never told you. I can't believe you just told me that. And we were both obviously freaked out at that moment. Like, how is that even possible? How were we able to have such a specific dream so regularly for that whole period of time? And eventually, once we kind of calmed down, we kind of questioned it. Like, did we both experience a trauma together, and we're maybe visualizing things in a similar way, being that we had the same background, to kind of process that. We couldn't identify a single thing. Now, I experienced major trauma when I was a kid, and my sister luckily didn't, which I'm always grateful for. And we haven't been able to figure out what it is until this day, because the moment that we both told each other this story, gone. Dream never came back again.
Now that's interesting. That dream was described to me last year by a complete stranger, right, when I was
Really?
at a weekend away.
I'm getting goosebumps
I'm
now.
sure I told you when I got back. I'm sure I told you when I got back. We were, crikey, we were talking about, we were at like a convention, and it was we talked about out of body, everything. It covered everything, and there was people just standing up and giving off, their experiences. It was about children and spirits specifically, and this guy stood up and just told exactly the same story, and he
That is
had
really
it.
spooky.
It's spooky, but is it? Is it not an indicator that children are sharing? Now, what would be really interesting, Kieran, is if you knew the dates that you had it on, and was your sister dreaming at the same time? Obviously, there's no way of
I need to
telling.
go back and work out the times, because I know roughly when I had the phone call, when we established we're having that same dream. I kind of wonder, is it a psychological thing? For example, like there's that common dream about your teeth falling out, for example, when you're experiencing high levels of anxiety, or walking naked into a classroom and being embarrassed, kind of thing. Those are quite standard dreams. So is it that? Do you think?
No, I don't think it's that at all. I've got to be honest with you. I'm not an expert. I think it's an awakening of the psyche. All of those things are going on. Why is it that you were working something through there? It sounds to me, you were saying you were
Yeah.
folding this carpet. He was folding this carpet as well.
Yeah. I kind of wonder if it's the entity, because I call it the entity because I don't really know what it is. Because linking into that, when I described my my out of body / near death experience, when I had just to recap, I was in a car accident and had an out of body experience where I walked across the hospital and then encountered something at the end of this hall, and the way it felt in that dream, the carpet dream, felt the same way as it did in the thing that I kind of encountered at the end, basically, where I kind of came in contact with something that I described it as a download, where it almost kind of showed me lots of different things, and it was so indifferent to me. It was so vast and so old and so ancient that it just didn't even acknowledge I was there, but I still connected with it. I was kind of overwhelmed, and I kind of came out of this out of body experience kind of panicking. And then obviously after I realised that when I was in the waking world, feeling a bit better with the nurse taking me around the hospital, I then knew my way around the hospital as if I'd been there, but without in my physical body, and that was the most amazing experience in itself. But there was something that I encountered at the end of this hall. I just don't know what it was. Like I thought, for years, maybe it was death itself. Is death an entity, or did I encounter what's the concept of the infinite though? Because I was so far at the edge that I was beginning to realise that there's no longer any time. I was having trouble with that. So is it the same as the carpet though? So is the carpet an echo of that previous event? I wonder.
A friend of mine has, or had, right up till into her 40s, a repetitive dream about being somewhere, and she was in the dark, and there was these horrible things, and it was a bit like yours. It wasn't the same as yours, but it troubled her. And I says, well, tell it off. Sorry, to go away. And she was having them, I think, about once a week. I says, tell it to go away. Whatever it is, I says, if you can recognise when it happens that it is the same dream, and you're aware, so you're lucid dreaming, I said, tell it to go away. And anyway, she stood up to it. She stood up to it and said, no. And she's kind of like, and guess what? It hasn't come back. So is it a fear that has to be faced? Is that something with you, that it's a fear that has to be faced?
I wonder if it was that then, because, yeah, I think when we both spoke about it, we faced the fear, but she didn't experience the event that I did. But in a way, she did vicariously, really, because knowing that your brother has been in hospital and seeing him in hospital and all that, she would have suffered too. Of course she would. And she was a few years younger than me at the time. She was only a little kid, and so was I still. So sometimes kind of siblings seem to almost transmit information, really, and sort of share burdens, maybe without realising it. So I wonder if that was her way of trying to help me in some way or form, because my sister, she would not be saying it now though, but I think she's a medium. I don't think she would want to admit it though, but I think she communicates through dreams, because there's one thing that happened recently. It was very sad but very sweet as well. My grandmother passed away over a year ago now, and I still miss her like anything. But we knew when she was kind of crossing over because something happened basically, and she was making her exit slowly anyway. And I had a dream one night where I met her in this park, and it's like a children's park. And when we were younger, she used to always take us to the park to play on the swings. She used to love doing that. And in this dream, I met her at the same park we used to go to, but it was very foggy. I couldn't see beyond where the park was. And I walked up, and she was there, and she said, "Oh, Kieran, it's you. I don't know where I am. I don't know. I want to go home. I don't know how to get there." And I sat with her on the swing, and I had this long conversation with her in this dream, and I won't share what I talked to with her about because it's personal though. But yeah, I kind of felt like I had this kind of last conversation with her, and I said, "It's okay now. And it's, we're okay. Don't worry about us. We're safe." I had such a long, this long dream where I woke up and I felt like she was still there because I could almost smell her. She had a very particular smell of lipstick she used to wear, and the things she used to put on her clothes. I don't know what it was anyway, but it used to be really strong. I could smell it as I woke up, and we checked with the hospital, and her body hadn't fully passed at that point anyway. But the night after, me and my sister had a shared experience at exactly 3 a.m. And 3 a.m. tends to be a trigger for some reason, and that's probably another conversation for another day, really. So basically, like the moment she passed, she seemed to align with two experiences me and my sister had. So my sister woke up just exactly about 3 a.m. because she was dreaming about our nan. She woke up because somebody was running their fingers all the way down her arm very slowly, very strongly. And as she woke up, she could still feel someone's hand moving up to her hand and then let go. She shot up out of bed and immediately had my grandmother in her mind. At the same time, in my house, of course, we live in two different houses. An item was on the windowsill, and I have like a little kind of metal kind of casing thing where I keep crystals and bits and pieces in. Stereotypical, I know, but yeah, it just suddenly jumped at 3 a.m. The most biggest bang kind of happened, and I was worried that the glass had smashed or something. It was really big explosion of sound. I kind of shot up out of bed and just checked everything was okay. I thought maybe there's broken glass everywhere. Nothing. For some reason, something banged so hard. Usually, in science, basically, a louder sound is it's the consequence of something being hit with force. Basically, it's an exertion of energy. So usually, you'd expect something to be thrown around there, but nothing, no damage. And I knew from that moment, I thought, Nan. And so, eventually I fell asleep. Anyway, it was quite hard to fall asleep after that because it just made me jump so much. Next morning, we got the phone call that she'd crossed over in the night, and it's like, you could say that could be coincidence. That's I won't eliminate that possibility. And the fact that our nan was on our mind though, but I knew in my heart, I knew exactly what it was. It's just her checking on us in her way or form just before she went, because she's such a caring person. She wants to know everybody is okay, everybody's safe. And it's almost like, I'm only going to go when I know you're all okay. And so she did exactly that, as she always does. So bless her. So sometimes you have those kind of beautiful goodbyes, and it's like, it's so heartbreaking. So, but at the same time, it's reassuring because I know that my nan doesn't any longer exist. She does exist, just in a different form, because energy can't be destroyed. Scientific fact. And I think, again, it will merge into the whole science versus kind of spirituality thing. I think eventually, like these whole supernatural, things can be explained, as part of just everyday life, really, and how amazing it is as we expand our understanding. So, and that's my proof that, I had something happen there, and that synchronization was amazing. And it helped me to kind of get closure maybe a bit quicker as well, because I thought, well, I do miss you. I do miss your crazy conversation and crazy jokes, though, but I'm kind of glad that you're okay now, wherever you are. So,
why am I not surprised? There are so many stories about people experiencing something when their loved one passes over, and more as well, people are actually witnessing with their eyes. One really interesting phenomenon more and more people are talking about is the atmosphere in the room, especially if it's a hospital room. It can get smoky or look smoky, misty, or it feels different, and I think that's brilliant that people are starting to see that there's a process going on.
Yeah, people are beginning to now, definitely. But I just love the fact that so many more people are open nowadays. They're more respectful of each other, and they're kind of curious about the greater beyond. All the fact that there's obviously a lot of things in the news at the moment where people are questioning the nature of the meaning of human existence, hence like the whole disclosure things that are happening where they're talking about potential life elsewhere. And I know you Penny kind of began to kind of share with me a few things anyway. You don't have to share here if you don't feel comfortable though, but yeah, either way, it kind of feels like there seems to be a shift in people's awareness, and what was previously not acceptable to discuss is now becoming acceptable, because people are now going, actually, I'm seeing things myself now. And I'm hoping conversations like these will become kind of more common, really. Like, hey, it's that's a weird thing that happened. I don't have the proof that you have had, but I'm here to have the conversation about it. What an amazing life this is, that we can experience these things.
Absolutely. If I just share a little story, actually, because my foster father obviously wasn't of a spiritual mind at all, was very closed mind of that. And just after he passed away, my sister called me up and she said, you need to come down to the house now. So I'm like, okay. So I get in my car, go down, and she said, dial 1471 on the phone. So I did that. And this was Mum's phone at home, at the family home. And I heard my father, it sounded like he was in an echoey box, and he said, ma'am, is you that? Ma'am, is that you that? Stella, is that you that? Oh, bugger. And that was my father off to a tee. And I put the phone down and we did it again. And I looked at her and I was like, oh my God, this is really, really freaky. And she was also of not this mind either. My sister said, that's Dad. And I said, it definitely is Dad. So we did 141, I think it is, or 147, whatever, to see where the call had come from. There was no number on it. Number unrecognised. And it's just amazing.
Christine's experienced something similar. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about spirit. They go, right, we've got some technology, so let's use it. And they seem to love the phone, And I had so many stories coming in, and I wish I'd had that one, you see. It could have been in the book, about people getting phone calls from their dead people. And a friend of mine, he was off somewhere in Derbyshire, and his mum had died a few days beforehand. So the whole family sort of took the camper vans out and sort of like chilled out. And his mum's husband, his phone went off and it come up, ma'am. And they looked at each other and they said, here, it's mum's phone. And they went, yeah. So thinking that somebody had broken into the house, they phoned the house phone. Nobody picked it up. So they rushed back, and guess what? There's the phone, but its battery is dead.
Absolutely. I've heard this before. Totally. Totally. Amazing.
So nobody broken in. How did it do that? How the hell does it do that? And I just think spirit are so very, very clever. And it's a great way of doing it. I mean, yeah, there's just so many stories of that happening. And I think how wonderful that I've even had one from a girl who she was feeling down. Her dad had been passed about 2 years. And, been there myself. It can take you a few years to get, especially if there's an anniversary coming. And she was thinking about her dad, and all the rest of it, feeling really down. She opened up her email. There's an email from her dad's defunct email thingy. She opens it up, it's a picture of him holding her when she's a little baby, saying, hi, baby. 2 years after he's dead. Come on. They're clever, aren't they? I love that. Me too. Kieran, that's the kind of thing that brings me joy. It is.
Yeah,
it is.
I used to hear of these things growing up, and I'm kind of the generation that watched kind of Ghostbusters. I used to be obsessed with Ghostbusters for years, and back then I used to play with these toys and watch it on the TV and watch the films, just thinking this is just fantasy though, because all these kind of crazy ghosts, they all grow bright green and blue and look kind of scary and kind of chase you about. And even though I love Ghostbusters, it's kind of redolent of like the mindset of like years ago of like the idea of ghosts being like super scary. And we have like, I love the films like The Conjuring, for example, which I know is obviously based on a true story, with some exaggerations, or some, by some I say a lot of exaggerations. But yeah, this whole mindset where we're educated that anything beyond the parameters that we set for you is scary. You should not venture beyond and all that. And in fact, we're going to make it entertainment, though. Like, we're going to make it so scary that it's seen as not real. And that, in a way, is kind of sad. Basically, like now as an adult, now I've seen what I've seen, and can fully understand what I had experienced growing up, and have accepted that. I've now realised actually that this isn't fantasy or magic or whatever it might be. It's just part of this beautiful world that we live in, and again, part of the greater expanding knowledge set for humanity as it changes over time.
I remember when I first sort of started sitting in circle and things like that, I said, I don't want to see you. I don't want to come back in from the toilet and there's somebody sat there. I don't want that, because I don't want to be frightened. So none of your manifestation malarkey, thank you very much. But if there's another way, you can let me know. But where I'm going with that was when I actually saw spirit, there was nothing in the world that was scary about it. I'd grown up with Hammer House of Horror and all those, the classic sort of thing. But when you actually see spirit, it's a wondrous thing. And the one thing, I think it's made of light. It's like it's made of, the spirit looks like light, a bit like Star Wars hologram kind of thing. That's how it appears. You know that they're real, but you know they're not. That they're not of this world.
Yeah.
But there's nothing spooky about it. So I just want to say
the physics only works this way in this particular reality as well, though, because we can't always assume that physics works the same way in any other dimension that we may encounter. So you could have solid light, you could have anything really. So it wouldn't surprise me, because I've experienced things myself where I've seen kind of glowing things, let's just say, not quite as much as Ghostbusters, but things that have kind of made me think interesting. Because I've even seen, like, I don't see, at least not that I'm aware of, physical manifestations in the way that Penny or Christine does, but I've seen kind of part physical manifestations in the way of, like, I don't know, I never really figured out why I saw it, though, or what I had to learn from that, though. But I've seen a pair of legs cross the street in direct sunlight, to the fact where the legs crossing the street were wearing kind of tracksuit bottoms and Adidas trainers. I saw it in that much detail, and that freaked me out. And this was like when I was a teenager, when I was beginning to fully wake up. And since then, I haven't really seen any physical things. I've seen things move, and I've heard and felt things, and they've always been consistent, though. But I haven't seen many physical things just yet. So I suppose, does that come with experience, really? Like, or are there different kinds of mediums, I suppose, or is it a level of experience thing?
I think it's fair to say, isn't it, Penny? You may never see them. Some people see spirit very readily. Other people don't. They sense, or they feel, or
Absolutely.
So you may never ever see it, or you may see it and not realise you're seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I was young, I was seeing it and didn't realise that's what I was seeing all the time. I thought everyone was doing it. But I also feel everyone's different. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And because I liken myself a bit thick, if it was very subtle, I think I'd miss it. It has to be that solid and that defined for me to be able to relay to someone exactly what their loved one looks like. Or one day I if it's okay, sorry, I had a lady come to see me, and I kind of sat there, and there was a gentleman stood behind her, but it wasn't him that he wanted to talk about, that she wanted to have communication with, sorry. Basically, she'd lost her dog, and I said, can I have a name? Because I work with vibration, I work with energy, because everything's energy. So I just asked for the name of the dog. That's it. I don't need to know a type. And immediately the dog came in. This was a different way of working for me. So I was learning that day, and had to rely very heavily on my guide at that point for guidance, obviously, because that's what they do. And then toward the end of this reading with this dog, I realised they're absolutely no different to working with a person,
No.
apart from the fact that I was squidged up in a corner doing a handstand wee-wee, because that's how the dog went to wee. For a 60-year-old woman, that was not an easy task, I can tell you that much. But isn't that amazing that that dog used my whole body to explain to its owner, this is me, this is what I used to do, and always, always a handstand wee. And it was like amazing, just amazing.
Yeah. So, what was it like connecting with animals, though? Did their energies feel different to humans?
Yeah, totally. It felt a lot lighter, purer. But I have to say, the overwhelming, I know this may sound like a cliche, the overwhelming love that this animal had for its owner was just tangible. And it actually, I felt it in here for the rest of the day. It was like being touched by a magical being. I can't explain it anymore. And then I did have a little spate of doing lots of animal readings, because I think when you are what we do, what we are, a communicator, we learn many different aspects working with different energies. And that's our progression. Because weirdly, I was thinking about tonight and then remembering that I used to do handbag readings. Mad.
What's handbag reading? I've never heard that before.
Well, basically, so my guide, you do know, he's a bit of a nightmare. I love him dearly, but he's a bit of a nightmare. So I used to do readings in shops. And this one particular day, I used to always start off with psychometry. And I've worked with some very weird things, like someone's sock one day. Don't even go there. Just don't. That was belt, whatever. And this one day, this lady came in and suddenly my guide said, we're going to work with her bag today. So I picked her bag up. And of course, because everything is energy, everything within her bag had a representation to an aspect of her life. And so I had to ask permission to go in. I said, although I might be of gypsy origin, I'm not going to steal anything from your bag, I promise you. I just need it to work with the energy. And then literally I would hold her purse or sanitary. Don't even go there, because the lady had problem. She literally did. She had a health issue that was being sorted out. And we're not doctors, and we always say we're not. But obviously this wasn't anything she didn't know, but this was just proof. So there I was working with a pack of Tampax, but but my guide finds that highly hilarious. But we get the messages over and we get the job done.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it, really. So that was a funny old thing. And we did that for about 6 or 8 months, and then you get moved on to something else, because you have to experience energy in absolutely every single thing. I sometimes feel that my guide sets me up, Kieran. That's what I'm going to say right now.
Yeah. I could tell he has a sense of humour, actually. I'm still getting to know my guide at the moment, though, and again, a bit of a joker, likes to hide certain things, but it's very much a wealth of knowledge, and it likes to refer to itself as compendium. I don't think it's its actual name. I think it's just what it wants to be called, because it's I feel like it likes to think it's a wealth of knowledge. And it gives me information just when I need to know it at just the right time. Sometimes it does kind of freak people out anyway. So apologies to anyone out there. But so my question to you both, whoever wants to answer first, really, is like, what is a guide to anyone who you haven't met, who hasn't met you before or met a medium? Like, what does a guide do, and what is a guide?
You have a principal guide. He's been with you from before conception. He's chosen to guide you, basically. He's not your granny. He's not Mrs. Something from the chip shop. Lots of people say this, my granny's. No, it's not. These people are highly, highly evolved souls. They have a great sense of humour, as you've found out, Penny. They're wonderful, loving entities that learn from you and you learn from them. They can choose to be with you during your lifetime because you're going to experience X. Yeah, and they need to learn, because spirit's about learning and evolving. We're forever evolving. So they stay with you, they guide you, they don't tell you what to do. And they're that small voice sometimes inside you that goes, are you really sure about that one? Or you will feel them around you. I think it's very sad that people don't have a good relationship. They talk about having a guide almost like it's something there, but how many of us really sit down and thank them for being with us and say, hey guide, I'm really hacked off today. That was a shit day. But you know what? Tomorrow's, and just talk to them. You get these people saying that they've got these guides and they're, like elevated this and elevated that. They are, but they're also the people that know us better than ourselves. And they're there learning from us. We're learning from them. Wonderful. I can't wait to meet mine when I eventually do, when I pass over. Because, I think he, she, it has changed. I think aspects have changed over the years, and certainly in the last 18 months, it's a different one. But that's just another aspect of him or her.
Yeah, so would you say the same, Penny?
Okay, so like I said, I think I'm just a bit old and weird, really, because me and my guy, it's like I'm married to two men. That's the way I liken it, because he is alongside me. He lets me learn my mistakes, and trust me, people have questioned why my guide would let this happen to me. Like I got affected by a dark energy once, and somebody said, well, why would your guide let you do that? And I said, well, why wouldn't he? Why do I always have to be saved? Why can't I learn this for myself? Because he had my back. It could have been horrendous, but he had my back. But I have to know the difference between a good energy and a not so good energy. How am I going to learn that if he's always perpetually stepping in? So that's my answer to that. I trust him implicitly. It is literally like a marriage. And it's funny, Chris, because you were saying about we have to learn with our guides and they learn. So my guide, when I was sitting in the development circle and obviously doing the rostrum work, he had to learn patience because he has zero patience. Yeah. And he couldn't understand that we couldn't get up and do our messages because there were other people in front of us. And I had to say to him, look, we can't do this. And so what I have to do was sit on my hands, bite my lip, and it makes it look like I've got chronic wind going on because he just wants to get up there and it's very annoying. For me, apparently, I've had to learn everything. So that's his sense of humour. That is who he is. And it's hilarious because he literally just talks to me. He just talks to me. And one day I was feeling a bit sorry for myself at the kitchen table and he rocks up and I'm like, oh, God, here it is. It's arrived. Because that's the kind of relationship we've got. And he said to me, what's the matter with you? And I said, you know what's the matter with me. And he said, no, what's the matter with you? And I was like, is he stupid? You know what's the matter with me. And he said, no, Penny. He said, you're actually creating all of this yourself. He said, now get up, stop feeling sorry for yourself and get on with your life. And he disappeared. And you know what? I've never forgotten that. I was quite cross. And you can imagine the swear words that came out when I was washing up.
Yes.
Probably went through about 15 cups at that point. But he really did have a point because it was just life stuff that I had no control over. And actually, that for me was one of the biggest gifts he gave me about actually not trying to control absolutely everything. Yeah. And he does go missing. So it's like he goes absent and then he'll come back and I say, where have you been? And he'll say, I have to go and learn so that I can then lead you into your next, he calls it an adventure. It is what it is. Whatever he says it is. And that's the way we work.
Did they get annual leave then? Did they sort of take a few days off, like holiday or something? Could they go somewhere just to chill out?
He goes to the scribes, but to be fair, I don't think he would put it as a holiday because he is a very knowledgeable guide and a very wise guide, but he still has to go to learn. And I think, Chris, you touched on this earlier. We never, ever stop learning, both us and our guides. The spirit world evolves all the time. Everything is always changing. And that is what makes this whole movement beautiful. Nothing is ever the same.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Totally. I hope you don't mind me asking, so you touched upon dark energies and I don't want to sort of share stories that will scare people and all that. What is a dark energy? What do you think it might be, basically? Could it be, previously a human or is it something else?
Honestly, a big debate here. It can be both. I used to do house clearings. I hope this will give some help here. And people would call up and they would say, "I've got a poltergeist in my house." Right, okay, we'll come along. 9 times out of 10, those spirits were not poltergeists. They were people trying to get people's attention because they can't hear them. So if they're going to be knocking and banging and moving and doing all those things, it's a way of getting your attention because they can't talk to you. So that's number one. Number two, when you actually sat down, or when we sat down and talked with that spirit, 90% of those were fearful of going over because they thought they were going to be judged or go to purgatory. And so they stayed somewhere familiar and they became attached to either a house, item of furniture, jewellery, etc., etc. And we went around and we sat and we would talk and we would say, you don't get judged by anybody, not at all. You judge yourself in your own time, in your own space. There's nothing fearful of going over. And actual poltergeist activity is 0.05% of anything that goes on in anybody's house. And even then, I don't even find that scary, to be really honest with you, because I'm a great believer in like the land, and like you were saying about ancient civilizations. Sometimes they put guardians over certain places. We come along, we rip it all up, we build houses. They're not going to be very happy. Sorry, that's my take on it.
No, in Ireland, they won't build where the fae folk are. And there was one guy, I'd have to go right back here because I remember the story, but basically he ignored all this. They have this tradition, if an area is known as for the fae folk, you leave it well alone. This guy was a bit arrogant and decided he was going to build, it was like a hotel or something. People going, oh, I won't be doing that now. Anyway, and it was a complete disaster. He lost millions. And in the end, he moved. Where he was putting it was what was called a fairy mound. That was it. And people say, no, won't be doing that. Anyway, he did. And in the end, it ended up with him giving up on his idea of a hotel, putting back the fairy mound and going off somewhere else and doing it. Because, these places have got a power about them.
Absolutely.
Feel it.
And who are we? Who are we
Absolutely.
to go and destroy that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
no, I do feel that because I think that's why I feel fortunate to have grown up in Oxford. I spent a lot of time studying there, and the place is just saturated with energies of sorts, and it's a thing that kind of makes me really happy. And I don't know if you both would experience the same though, but some places just smell right, and it's not a physical smell. It's something that kind of emanates from the atmosphere. And what I love is like places of education. So I love going into universities, like those old, the old halls of like Christ Church and Balliol College and all the other different places. If you're going there when it's empty, you can smell the education, that you smell like the love and the knowledge, and something about it has like energy, and you can tell it's kind of sponged essentially, like just collected all of this knowledge and these feelings over the years, and most of it's kind of positive energy. I love just sitting in it, and it just feels good. For example, like I don't follow a religion now though, but I love to sit in churches though, because whether it's correct or not though, the people that go there believe in whatever they believe, and you can feel that belief and love, and you kind of slip that up too. Basically, I just love places that just have that kind of good positive feeling. So in a way, yeah, going to church does help me, but in not the way that you would think. Yeah, I just love kind of collecting these kind of good feelings from places, and it goes the same with people really. Like, yeah, sometimes if I'm going about in a bit of a grump, I'm having a bit of a bad day. Yeah, sometimes I kind of tend to attract people that I don't really want around me, who only make it worse or will explode with anger or whatever it might be. But sometimes you'll meet just the right person with a much higher vibration, and they'll bring you up to their vibration as well, and out of that way of thinking. And sometimes, I could spend hours like grumbling about something so trivial, and then the moment that you pass out of that energy, you suddenly realize actually it's just such a small thing really, I didn't really need to worry about that. So I love just the energies left in places, and some places just feel so old and so ancient that you feel like you can only give it absolute respect. I haven't been to, for example, Stonehenge yet. Stonehenge, like I love, the Druids gather at Midsummer's Day.
Excuse me, you have never been to Stonehenge. What is wrong with
not
you
yet.
now? I was there. I've been several times. I can remember the days back in the old days where you were actually allowed to go and chip off. There was a man who used to hire out rock hammers, and that was all stopped, of course. We are going back to the 1950s here, that one. But I was there a couple of years ago, and you're not allowed to touch them, but we had a early morning visit. It was you pay extra, and you're actually. I think we were inside the circle for about maybe half an hour. But there's two. I call them the grandfather stones, and me and my friend went up, and it was just the energy that was emanating from you. I can feel it now. It was almost like it's just you treat yourself. Treat yourself. It is a place of immense energy. I had a very strange experience there years ago. I'd gone, and I used to get headaches a lot. And when I was there, and I thought it was something negative, and it was a very old lady, much wiser than me, who turned around and she went, "No," she says, "it's because you're a sensitive, my dear." She says, "There's nothing negative there at all." And there was a guy, and this was in the car park, and he was playing a didgeridoo. He was with a lady,
As you do.
and he was playing
Kieran.
Sorry.
a didgeridoo. And we got talking, and she explained that she was doing. Her son had come over here as a gap year from Australia, and he was moving about the country visiting all these sites, and he got killed, unfortunately. So she decided that she was going to, as a bit of a pilgrimage, do the sites that he was doing. And she brought this guy over from Australia that could play the didgeridoo, and we got talking, and I said, "Oh, it's amazing. I love this place." He went, "The old people knew things that we don't know." I says, "Like what?" He says, "This place isn't here by accident." I says, "Why is it here?" He says, "Because all around the world there are spots of power." And he says, and they line up with the standing stones here, the pyramids there, blah, blah, blah. And I got and thought about it. And of course, that took me down a whole new sort of research thing. And it's right. There's all this power. And you must go. When you take your kids,
I will.
they
I've
have
passed by there so many times, and I see it's kind of with so many tourists around it, and it's fenced off, and it doesn't seem right that somebody should even own it. Really, I don't know why anyone owns it, but anyway,
It was actually bequeathed to the the country, and it was Michael Heseltine. When during the Thatcher
oh
years, and things were
yeah,
really sort of bad, and he developed enterprise zones, and that's when you saw British Heritage, and they realised that apart from Buckingham Palace, the biggest attraction for foreign visitors coming in was Stonehenge. That's when they started That's when we started having to
gosh,
pay for it. You see, when they realised it was an income, but it was originally it was actually bequeathed to the country as being ours.
interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I got on a
Okay,
rant there.
I'll add that on my list.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we'll definitely go
beautiful.
at some point. Yeah, so
Try
I don't
Avery
want
as
to.
well.
Oh yeah, Avery's good.
Love Avery. I
Avery.
prefer Avery. Yeah,
Is
amazing.
Avery? Is
Yeah,
it the town, a town or a village or something?
They've got stones as well. The Avery stones.
Oh,
That for
sorry, yes, the
me,
Avery Stones.
beautiful, beautiful.
they're gorgeous. They are. And
Yeah.
on a misty
Well, I've had my
morning,
time, in places
so
of power where I've kind of sat in amongst trees and places that feel like good energies, though. So I think I'm kind of open to picking up those things. So I'll definitely head over there.
and the other place is West Kennet Long Barrow.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's gorgeous. I
Okay.
went to walk in there once, and I actually got pushed out by the energy, and I said sorry. So I asked permission of my ancestors,
Right.
says, "May I enter?" And it was like you can feel these things, and I think that's because you're a medium.
Usually, there are some places that I enter that I do feel like I'm pushed out of, though, and sometimes it is security, I have to say, though, but there's some places that feel quite low energy. They feel like you sort of push, yeah. So there are places that I try to respectfully go, okay, I'm not going to enter, just with respect to whatever's here, and to the confusion of the people that are around me anyway. But anyway, well, hopefully, I'd love to speak about this for like hours on end, though, so I don't want to kind of tie you guys too much, because I know it's kind of getting late into the night now. So I know there's a lot more stories to tell anyway. Like there'll be a lot more of these in the future, definitely, because it's a lot of fun to make, really, and it's kind of nice having these conversations. I feel very privileged to know so many nice people, really, and people that have made me who I am ultimately. So yeah, thank you both as always. So yeah,
well.
one last question for you both. So is there a message that you would like to leave to the world, basically? Like, I don't know if Penny, if you have a message, like if your guide wants to say anything, or Christine, if there's anything that you want to say, like whichever you want to go first, really.
So I know one of the questions that you thought you'd like to ask us. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes now. Look,
Not bad. Wow.
There's so many, but it's weird because Chris mentioned certain things, and I've written them down prior to actually meeting today. So it was really quite weird when Chris was saying what she was saying first off. It's like, I wrote that. Oh my God, I wrote that. So we're obviously on the right energy vibration, which was really beautiful. So you asked really, what would my advice be to someone who was actually seeking to develop their natural gift? My first thing would be protection. Always, 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 always. I can't say enough. Always protect. Seek out a really good development group. For me, you don't have to pay an arm, a leg, and a donkey, because that doesn't get you anywhere quicker. You need to take your time with it and don't try and rush, because sometimes if we're trying to get to the end goal, we're missing that journey and all the little things along the way. Try and listen to everybody else's experience whilst in a circle, because you're going to learn from other people, as well as whoever is running it, really. The other thing for me I found really useful was developing my own 5 senses. And then my 6th sense came in when I actually met my guide, and we did obviously deeper work. But to actually fine tune, because we wander around in the world, not even really using all of our own 5 senses to the heightened ability that they should be used. So for me, that was a really great thing, because if someone's not a great talker, and yet they're going to give you images, you need to be able to look at the world and look and notice different things. So that's me. And also, you need to enjoy it. Yeah. You need to enjoy the journey. But my overall thing is, get your guide, know your guide, trust your guide, and remain humble. That's my little bit of advice.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, the ego, and it applies to pretty much anything in life, really. Like, introducing too much ego has always negative consequences anyway. It begins to kind of taint your intention, really. And that's the thing. Like, you could say, like, as I mentioned previously, like, I used to absolutely hate public speaking. I used to get so nervous, heart racing, sweaty hands. I used to speak too quickly. I'm not particularly great at pronunciation because I get so nervous. And yet here I am now, kind of doing what I do. But to any outsider that doesn't know kind of how hard I used to find it, and the fact that I put myself out there to do these kind of conversations as I'm doing now, could say to me, oh, you're just on video, so you must be egotistical. You're probably doing this for your own, just to be out there in public and doing your own thing. You can think that. I'm not going to stop you thinking that. You have your own thoughts, so I'll respect that regardless, though, but it doesn't mean that's the truth. In fact, Absolutely. This is just like one average kid basically just giving it a go, like trying to evolve the way in which they communicate, because I have so much knowledge and information behind this face and this fake body, I suppose, that it's nice to actually finally grapple with something that's been kind of holding me back for so many years, and now I'm able to kind of slowly, hopefully in better iterations, output all of this knowledge and these learnings in a way that kind of builds up confidence. So yeah, you can call me egotistical for doing that. There's always a counter to that, and there's always a truth.
For me, when I look at you, Kieran, I think you're doing this because once you were lost, and now you're finding yourself. And I think you're now reaching out to all the other people that are lost, just where we've all been at some point. And you are going to inspire them and help them to find themselves and help them to find themselves. So I all power to you. I think you're doing an amazing job. Well done.
Thank you. No, but that's the crux of it. Really, really, like it's I was lost for many years for many different reasons, though. But I see that the pursuit of knowledge often finds you, whatever knowledge that might be. Anyway, though, it's just simply knowing and educating yourself about the world, learning from different people. Even if it's just studying different religions, for example, and then different philosophies. I mean, I went on like a big philosophy binge. I mean, that's such a boring thing in itself, a philosophy binge. But I went on it and I absolutely loved it. There are things that I discovered that I didn't agree with, some things that I did, but the fact that I knew these different ways of thinking, it left me open to many other different concepts. So now, after all these years, I've been able to accept who I am, what I do. I mean, I have a lovely day job, I have a lovely family and everything, but it's taken me many years up to this point to finally realize actually this is actually the Kieran. Like, I realize, I'm an energy in a body. Basically, this body's just a temporary thing, and it isn't me. And that I define who I am basically by my actions. So I may have a name, Kieran, I may have a body, like I say, but the real me is behind all of this. And it's the same for everybody else. Like we sometimes we feel lost because we think, for example, the body that we're in is all that we are, or the institutions that we're part of tell us who we are. And it's just when you begin to kind of evolve beyond that and still have a lot of love for the places that got you there, because I still remember, there's one particularly bad priest I do remember many years ago, but one that I always will love anyway. I think the world of, though, and I do kind of bump into him every so many years and have a good laugh with him. But I still remember that there are people in these things that are so full of love and so full of kindness, and they do genuinely believe in those things, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we can't always assume that everybody who doesn't believe in what you believe or I believe in is bad, because they're not. Because everybody's at different stages of this linear kind of journey, I suppose. And I suppose, it's when you begin to leave that linear journey, you realise actually things aren't linear. Things go off in infinite directions, infinite pathways and ways you can grow and develop. So anyway, that's my spiel anyway, and I won't hold you guys up too much. So no, thank you both for being here. It means the world that you're both kind of part of these conversations.
Nice to meet you, Penny.
Yeah, you too, my lovely. I've got your book by the side of my bed.
Oh, have you read it?
Well, I'm dyslexic, so it's a bit of a slow job, but I'm getting there.
Well, if you call Christine, she can read it out for you.
Oh, you can get it on audiobooks?
I think we're going to do it that way, yeah, because...
Oh, that'd be great.
Because a lot of people can't read properly, or their eyesight is failing, especially older people, so... Yeah. So
that's a good idea.
Brilliant idea. Definitely.
Trying it anyway.
Yes, that's Christine's book, The Violet Feather, which again is a great read. I keep saying every episode, people can get bored of it though, but trust me, it is worth reading.
Bless you.
And you guys, you take care. Have a lovely evening.